Okay, as in go? Sorry, 1 second.
Forktales, a podcast that feeds the food and beverage world.
Oh, awesome. Forktales is brought to you by Vigor, a branding and marketing agency for passion-driven, innovative restaurant, beverage, and hospitality brands. Learn more at vigorbranding.com. If you love what we're serving up, please give Forktales a 5-star review on your podcast service of choice. Think of it as a tip for good service.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I have the honor of being joined by Bobby Shaw. For those that don't know, Bobby Shaw has a storied history in the restaurant space, from McDonald's to Chipotle to his own consulting, writing a book, having a podcast. Hopefully, I didn't take away your job, but Bobby, say hello. Give a little bit of backstory.
Hey, thanks, Joseph. I'm really honored to be here. So thank you for having me. So I've been in the restaurant industry, like you said, for my entire career. I began my career in high school at McDonald's in 1984, really not knowing really what I wanted to do. So I worked there. I thought it was just going to be for a short time. I ended up being there till 2001. So it was a really, really long career, but I learned so much from my time at McDonald's, and I'll talk more about this when we talk about my time a little bit in my career later on. But, I learned so much about processes and people and systems. And so I started my career working in the kitchen and ended up working my way up through hourly manager in high school, and then became a GM and then a multi-unit leader for them, and did that through 2001. It was really kind of the bedrock foundation of my career. And then following McDonald's, I went to work for a little company that nobody could pronounce called Chipotle, and here in Kansas City, where I am now. There's just a handful of restaurants. There were less than 200 nationwide. Hard to believe, since there's now 3,300, I believe. So worked here in Kansas City. Yeah. So I worked here for a few years. Then I got a call asking if I wanted to take a promotion and move to Austin, Texas. That was 2005. So I did that, moved to Austin, ran Austin, Houston, and a few other markets. And then I got a call to take over the southeast part of the U.S. And keep my territory in Texas. So I did that, and that was super fun. That was a lot of geography. It really helped me stretch and just really reinforced how important people development is. And so that was super fun. So I became an executive regional director in 2008, and had that whole part of the U.S. and we just went on a tear. We opened 100 locations. We developed just thousands of people. It was an incredible time. And so I was with Chipotle until 2012. Went to work for another small little burrito company in Austin, Texas, with about 100 units. Did that for about 3.5 years as the president and chief operating officer. And that was a super fun experience with Freebirds, because with Freebirds, it was a brand that was much smaller, and it was also an older brand. So it had been around since 1987. And so I had a chance to go in and with the team there, kind of rebuild the team and create the culture that we wanted. So that was exciting. So I did that for about 3 years. And then I started my own consultancy, where I really had a passion for helping other restaurant owners and leaders really build their business and really understand how to grow and scale, if that was their choice, or if they just wanted to be better. If they just wanted to have better people, they wanted to have a better culture. And so I really wanted to do that. So I did that for about 4.5 years. And then just recently, I took a new role as chief operating officer with an exciting company here in Kansas City called Unforked, where it's really small, just a few restaurants, but we have really big plans to grow and scale. And again, it's about great food and great people, and also enlightened hospitality. So that's kind of a little brief overview of me. So, and then along the way, I wrote a book. Which was also really fun. And that really documents my experience from my time at McDonald's through my time at Chipotle, and all the things I learned I thought would be helpful for other people. So,
Yeah, and I think that's great. So I've been following you for a while, and obviously the resume speaks for itself in so many ways. But one of the things I like about what you just went over is there's a very large misconception, I think, by the broader population, especially youth, that the restaurant industry is not really one that you should be proud to get into, or not really one that has a future. And I think we're seeing that in the labor shortages that we're still struggling with as an industry as well. But the path that you just laid out is impressive. It's awesome, and I'm not trying to just blow smoke on you or up your rear just because you're on the show. But I'm like, this is case in point. You started at McDonald's, I presume, at the counter,
I did in the
and
kitchen. I started making hamburgers in the kitchen. Yeah,
making hamburgers in the kitchen. And while my path is a little bit different, I started at a bagel shop when I was 15 years old, mopping the floors.
that's awesome.
I went from mopping the floors to working the counter, from working the counter to making the bagels, to delivering the bagels, to
Wow.
managing a store, to managing two stores.
Yep.
And then I was like, I don't want to be in the restaurant industry in this capacity because I'm really creative. And, so my path is something similar. So when I talk to younger folks, I'm like, guys, this is not something to be embarrassed about. This is a different path. That's a really good path. And you should try to embrace it because it's pretty amazing.
I'm really glad you brought that up. That's such an important point. I don't have a college degree. I mean, I went to college, but I didn't complete it. I mean, I am going to do that for myself, not because I feel like I need, that I need to or that I have to, but I want to. But I didn't have a college degree, and I just found out that I was really good at this. And I really gravitated towards the people side of it, even as a younger leader. Like, I understood the value of surrounding yourself with people who are really good, that were as good or better than you. And it does create a career path unlike anything that I've seen, where, it's so inspiring because my time at Chipotle, where, we really created this career path, the restaurant tour program, how someone could go from working in the kitchen or working on tortilla and, someday 3 or 4 years down the road, be able to run their own restaurant and have a company car. I mean, just unbelievable stories like that, Joseph, like hundreds of stories that just came out of my part of the country where, there is a career there. And, I know people don't see it that way sometimes, and they don't think that. They think, wow, why would I want to work in a restaurant? Well, you can create a pretty good life for yourself, as I think we both have made clear. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw, so what you just explained, we experienced with one of our clients out on the West Coast, the San Jose area, called Eric's Deli Cafe. And, they started franchising. They're predominantly franchised, but they did stagnate. The pandemic wasn't the nicest to them. They've gotten through it. They have persevered, and I'm so proud of them for that. But one of the things we realized before the pandemic is, well, they had a nice aggressive franchise sales launch initially. It died off. And what happened was, I think, 2 instances of someone who worked in the store actually became a franchise. They created that path to becoming a
Wow.
franchisee. And while they have a lot of great franchisees,
Yep.
I have to say that these one in particular, the first one, immediately became the second from the top as far as revenue and profitability. They
Wow.
run the hell out of the location. They're looking at getting another one, and I'm like, that right there, that's the path. And these people that I'm talking about in particular are immigrants. They came to this country legally, and they worked it. They worked their rear ends off, and the sky's the limit for them.
That's right.
And I love that story. And our industry is just teeming with stories like that. And yet they're just not told. All people see from the youth are, oh, you're working at McDonald's. They turn their nose up. It's fast food. It's a means to a different end, like this is what you do until you get out of college. But for those that have the touch, for those that have that hospitality in their blood, you don't need to really go to college, like you said. I mean, you can go back and actually get stronger, but you can actually go pretty far on, a college or a high school education.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I love that. And, for myself, I had the good fortune of working for a wonderful owner operator, great franchisee in McDonald's, one of the leaders here in the Midwest and really across the country, Art Phillips. Art was just one of those kind of once in a generation leaders that, during my career where, he had an organization that was only so large. And, he actually encouraged me to take the next step and to go work for the corporation, and a lot of franchisees wouldn't do that, but Art did, because he saw that I had more to give, and he saw that I had more than he could actually, use at the time. And so when you get connected in with a good group of people like the ones you're talking about on the West Coast, that's really incredible, because this is all about creating opportunities for people that otherwise wouldn't exist. And
Right.
this concept of surrounding yourself with people that are as good as you are, or hopefully better than you are, is something that, for the last 10, 12 years of my life, I've just been preaching every chance I get, because it's how you create a culture that's going to sustain itself and be able to reproduce itself.
Yeah. So let's talk about, McDonald's was the starting point, springboarded you into something new, and then you shifted over to Chipotle. I mean, I remember the very first time I saw a Chipotle. It was in New York. It was on 7th Avenue in 26th Street, or at least right around there.
Yep.
And I remember thinking like, whoa, what's this place? And it opened up right next door to a Better Burger concept. Now, guys, this is back in 2006, 2007. So like the Better Burger War hadn't started yet.
Yep.
But it was called BRGR or
yeah,
BGR.
Exactly. BRGR. Yeah, the guy who started that's from Kansas City, actually.
Okay, cool. Fantastic burgers. I remember having a burger there and thinking like, oh my God, why do not other people make these burgers? These are fantastic. But Chipotle was right next door.
Right.
What an amazing time to be a part of that brand when you hopped on. What were some remarkable experiences that you had with Chipotle in your tenure there?
Wow. So many things. What I like to say, I think I'd like to set this up by saying that, when I worked for McDonald's, I spent a long time there. I really learned how to manage. And what I like to tell people is when I made that transition to Chipotle, I learned how to lead. Some of the most amazing experiences that I had there starting at the beginning of my career in 2002 was we didn't have any money. I mean, we just didn't. Like people look at it now and go, oh, Chipotle, they're a multi-billion-dollar corp. Yeah, they are, but we weren't then. And so some of the most amazing experiences I had were really telling that story, like creating that grassroots movement and, working alongside so many other people to do that here in Kansas City specifically. A lot of people don't know this, but this was the number 2 market after Denver. This is where we came first after Denver. A lot of people don't know that. Kansas City was the next market. So there was a lot of expectations on Kansas City to, can we prove this concept out? Sure, it works in Denver where Steve was from and, all that. So that was an amazing experience here working alongside the rest of the team to really build the brand. That was super fun. That was as grassroots as it gets. Right. And I remember our job was to try to get as much food as we could into the mouths of our guests or the potential guests. And so that was exciting. Some other things that were really exciting were some of the experiences that I experienced where this was in the days before Facebook, before Instagram, before social media. And so everything we did was like radio and like grassroots events, right? So, we would do all those sorts of things. Then, the experience I had of being able to be a part of creating this career path that I mentioned earlier, the restaurant tour program, a group of probably 10, 12 other leaders working directly with the CEO, Steve Ells and Monty Moran, and really creating this framework for people to do what we were talking about, to have a career, right? We realized that 8 times out of 10, when we hired someone from the outside, it didn't work out. It just didn't work out. So we had this really high turnover, so it was hard to get traction. And we realized that we had so many great people inside of our restaurants and that were already working for us and that were working with us. And we just needed to create an opportunity for them to grow, which is how we were able to create the career path. So to be in on the ground floor of that, watching those lives change and, all the ebbs and flows that came with that, that was such an amazing experience. One of the things that, we talked about was wanting to change the way the world thought about and ate food, fast food. And we did that. I mean, I just had Dan Fogarty on my podcast a few weeks ago, and Dan was one of the first marketing executives, and he and I had a really passionate conversation about those early days and the things that we did. And that's something that he said is that, we didn't have any money, but we wanted to change the world, and so Get just that
Yeah.
full 10 years of being a part of that was really amazing.
Yeah, I love the story of Chipotle. What's interesting, well, one, I love it because I don't know how many times I've gotten phone calls from, we want to be the Chipotle of fill in the blank of some
Right.
sort of concept.
Right.
Um, and what I started to realize is what they were saying. They saw the end result, or not the end result because we're not at
Yep.
the end, right?
Yep.
But they saw the results, the success, the gravitas that brand had built and continues to build in a lot of ways, and they wanted that. But they just wanted to do it with hot dogs or hamburgers
Yep.
or yada yada. But what really interested me is I started to realize that when they said we want to be the Chipotle of, they were speaking specifically about the operational model.
Right.
Um, and one of the things that I would say is like, yes, we need to have a strong operational model, but first, have you figured out if this is actually going to work for your cuisine?
Right.
Because I think Chipotle is responsible, for better or for worse, for the step by step build your own.
That's
And what I started realizing when we started doing studies with some of our clients over the years, for instance, I'll take a brand that we built out in Honolulu called Grilt,
right.
and it got up to about 3 units, and then they realized that people in Hawaii don't want to eat healthy, so um, and that's not a knock on. I don't necessarily mean the natives
No.
or the
Right. Right.
locals. I'd say when you're on vacation, you're like, oh, where can I get a fantastically grilled healthy salad? They're like, no, give me the fat, bro.
Right.
So we had a step by step approach. It's a build your own plate concept, and I was like, guys, we're having trouble pulling people through. We're having trouble with people understanding. Now, that is partially because we have in Hawaii we had a large American draw, but we also had a large Korean and Japanese and multi languages,
Sure.
and you can't put all those languages on a board.
Right.
So I was like, why don't we try pre-built sandwiches and salads that they can just point and say that one? And what we saw is like they actually worked better than the build your own.
Wow.
And that's not saying that Chipotle had something wrong.
No.
It's just seeing magic doesn't mean it's magic for you.
No, it
Um,
doesn't. I mean, I think you bring up an excellent point. I mean, with the model we had and the model they still have today, you're not cooking for the guest. You're cooking for the line. So that's a very different, it's an important distinction because you know how much chicken you need to get through $1,000 hour, right? You can calculate the usage per thousands of retail yields. That's what we're doing, right? And then we know the guests are going to be there. And then so we're able to prepare that so quickly. And I think a lot of people thought, oh, yes, the food is made just for you. Like it's made exactly the way you want it, 100% customized the way you want it. But we're cooking for the line. We're not cooking for the individual guest. And so that's what makes that model, I think, a little more unique. And so people do struggle when they say, I
yep.
want to do the Chipotle thing. Well, are you sure? Because there's more to it, and the other thing is, I think, and where I thought you were going with that conversation is that people want to be the next Chipotle, and what they don't realize is how hard those early years were. Everyone thinks
Oh
we
yeah.
were an overnight success. We were about a 13-year overnight success. So it didn't happen overnight. Right. And when you hear the story about Steve Ells wanting to start Chipotle and having to borrow money from his dad, and then having to borrow some money from his dad's friends who were the initial investors. And, you hear about him opening Evans, in Denver. And I mean, it's an inspiring story, but it was hard. It was hard, and I think a lot of times people don't get that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's easy to look past and have rosy lenses, as to how they got there.
Yes.
But like you said, there was no money, and
No.
one of the things that I've admired about Chipotle is it was built without ever placing an ad or doing much marketing in the traditional sense because there wasn't money for it.
There wasn't money for it. I mean, and that's why things like the little coins that you've probably seen around, right? There was a great article a few weeks ago in Entrepreneur Magazine that Dan Fogarty, that first executive I was talking about that was on my podcast, The Marketing Executive, was kind of talking about some of the unique things we did to tell the story because we had to, and there just wasn't a lot of advertising dollars available. And so, especially in a market here, where just outside of Denver, there was no other market. And so we had to figure out how to do it really organically without a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and that's something that I think a lot of restaurateurs today can really identify with. But they come to us and they're like, how do we do this? And I'm like, dude, I mean, you need someone who has a marketing mindset.
Yep.
That works with operations. Those two groups need to be in lockstep, and so often they're not. They're just divided, right?
You know what? Gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is something I talk about all the time. It's not operations here and marketing over here. When you talk about culture, it takes the two of them moving at the same. They have to be in lockstep, like you said. They have to be in order for it to work, or else you have a bunch of people in marketing who come up with these crazy ideas that we can't execute in operations, right? I mean, and that doesn't work, right? We've all seen that happen, over our time in the industry. So yeah, you have to be working together really side by side. And it's not one or the other, it's both.
Right. Yeah, and when they do come together, magic happens. So let's shift. I mean, we could talk about Chipotle probably for years,
Yeah, we could.
and I think there's a lot to learn there. But maybe I'll reach out to Dan and see if I can get him on the podcast to unpack some of the marketing aspects. But you went from Chipotle to, and just everyone who's listening, notice how we say Chipotle,
not
just
Chipotle, not Chipotle, or not
Chipotle.
Which, oh gosh, yes. So funny.
So side note on that, I use Chipotle when we were talking about naming.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of paper tigers, red herrings, whatever you want to call them, that get caught up in naming, right?
Oh, yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of emulation. That's why we saw the whole blank and blank movement. Thank God we're coming out of that. But they're like, well, that's really hard to pronounce. I'm like, dude, no one can say Chipotle. So I don't think pronunciation's a really big problem.
Exactly.
Exactly. If they're coming in the door, I don't care what they call it.
That's so funny. It's so true.
So you go from Chipotle to technically a competitor, right? I mean, Freebirds World Burrito is a competitor.
Yeah, that was a really interesting transition. So you go from this kind of huge brand juggernaut, tons of success, IPO, kind of taking over the world, changing the way the world thought about and ate fast food, right? You go from that to a brand that was 26 years old, that had lost its voice, kind of lost its relevance. They actually started before Chipotle. They started in 1987, and Chipotle didn't start until 1993. They started on the West Coast in Santa Barbara, at USC Santa Barbara, and were sold to an investment group 2007. They had moved to Texas, kind of moved their home base to Texas. Still had an office in California. So I said no like 3 or 4 times. And you know how sometimes when you're on the phone with the recruiter and they won't tell you exactly what you're talking to them about. They won't tell you the name of the company. So finally on that last call, I'm like, okay, you gotta be talking about Freebirds. Like, who else are you talking about? Like, and it was. So, I had taken some time off from Chipotle. I had taken a long sabbatical to kind of reconnect with my kids and my family, and because I've been on the road so long. And so I did. I joined, and we moved the office to Austin, and it was a really great experience because I, again, went from that huge brand to a small brand that also didn't have any of the really systems or processes or anything that I was used to. And so we got to rebuild that whole thing. I got to rebuild the entire executive team. The only one who was there when I got there was the chief financial officer. So he and I worked together. And again, you talk about, the marketing and the operations. It's true with finance too, right? You need finance and operations to be on the same page, right? Because those guys are the ones writing the checks for the initiatives you want to go do. So, we built the team, and we did a number of really exciting things there, including an entire re-engineering of the menu. We designed a new 2.0 building and prototype. We really...
what year was this?
This was actually with Freebirds that we implemented.
Oh, but what year? So when you came on board?
This would have been 2013. Yep, 2013, 2014.
Okay, great.
I started at the end of 2013. So yeah, over that next 3 years, we rebuilt the culture, re-engineered the menu. We did so many incredible things with people development. We opened a couple of new markets. We did things that brand hadn't done for a really long time, including make money. So it was really a great time to do it. And I think what we proved out, what was important, is that we could be ourselves and didn't have to be Chipotle, right? I think that's where they got themselves tripped
Yeah.
up. That they themselves wanted to become the next Chipotle. Well, you're never going to be the next Chipotle. That's you're just not. That's a once in a generation type brand that you're just not going to be. But you can be yourself, and you can be really, really great at what you do. And we were able to prove that out. It was awesome.
Yeah, one of the things we say at Vigor when we hear that, like, you're going to hear that. People see an opportunity, they see something worth emulating,
Yep.
And then that's how the sentence comes out. Hey, we want to be the next Chipotle. We want to be,
right.
And what we say is like, oh, wait, let's be clear here.
Yep.
You will never be a better Chipotle than Chipotle, so don't play that game.
Right. Exactly. Now, you can certainly take some great things they do, and you can figure out how to adopt those, right, and how to repurpose those things. I think that's what you do. I think that competitive intelligence is important, and I think that you can figure out how you can do something that maybe is unique to what you do using some things they have. And I think that's what a lot of brands do, and that's smart. I mean, you want to learn from the best in class, and I'm a huge fan of Danny Meyer, in Shake Shack and everything he's built, right? And every time I hear Danny talk, I'm like, I'm using that. I'm never going to be Danny Meyer. I'm never going to be Danny Meyer, but I can take those things that he teaches and I can use those, in my world. So,
yeah, he's an absolute wealth of knowledge and a lot to look up to.
For sure.
So we have Chipotle and we have Freebirds. These are two burrito concepts. So I was going to say I don't intend to put you in a weird situation, but I actually do intend to put you in a weird situation. From your point of view, being involved in both.
Yeah.
Freebirds starts first, Chipotle comes second, but Chipotle skyrockets. Freebirds doesn't. What are like 2 or 3 things that you think were the difference between the two?
It was the quality of the ingredients. I think initially, early on, they were just so much better with Chipotle. I think that made a huge impact. I think also the menu was too complicated at Freebirds. There were way too many choices. People talk about Chipotle. When I started, you have to remember at the time, there were 4 proteins, there were 4 sauces, there was 1 rice, there were 2 beans, and there were fajitas, right? But within that small little menu, you can create anything you want. And I think at the time we used to have some stuff up at the restaurant that said you can create 65,000 different combinations, right? With just a small menu. That was the genius of Chipotle. But at Freebirds, where there's just so many options, trying to be everything to everyone, I think that really hurt them because it was super, super hard. They also had a very weird service model when I got there that we changed, where they would kind of rotate the line where, you'd start with one person, but then that person would then leave you and then go to another station. It was just this weird kind of like rotation.
Oh, interesting.
In terms of service, and that never made sense to me. So we changed that. So there were some of those core operational things. And then I also think that in terms of like the vision of the company, right? Like if you think about the vision that we had for Chipotle, it was to change the way the world ate fast food. If you think about Freebirds, it was like, we want to be the best burrito in the state of Texas. So those are 2 different kind of things, right? They're both really good, but you're thinking smaller, I think, when you're thinking about just a state. So I think there were a few things that kind of played into it that kind of affected that. And then I also think that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the McDonald's investment. Having an investment from McDonald's into the brand for Chipotle, right? That was huge. And it was also a real challenge for people because people would always ask us, or they would say, you're owned by McDonald's. Like, no, we're actually not. They are the largest investor that we have, but they and when we talk about once in a lifetime type things, I don't think this will ever happen again. I mean, I know McDonald's has tried it since, and every time they tried it, it's failed. They invested in us, and they let us do what we do. They never made us do anything. Like, they never made us serve breakfast. They didn't make us get drive-thrus. They didn't make us do any of that stuff. They just left us alone, which was a great decision for them. So I think also that was certainly a big difference. And so we had this amazing vision from Steve Ells that, what he wanted to do. And then we had the capital to be able to do it. So I think those are kind of some of the things that probably contributed to the disparity and kind of the 2 brands in terms of scale.
Yeah. And Chipotle did his, Yeah, so Chipotle did a spinoff too. I don't know if you were a part of it because I'm just blanking on the years.
I was Shop House. Yeah, it was Shop House.
Yeah,
Yep. So sure did. I was there for that. That was 2010. So Shop House opened in Washington
sounds about right.
D.C. Yeah, Southeast Asian or sorry, Asian Grill. Um, great, great food. Great food. Very much kind of the same model that we had at Chipotle. But it just didn't quite have the following that we did.
Right.
And then I know they invested. This was after I left, but they also invested into Pizzeria Locale, which is a pizza concept that's actually in Boulder, based in Boulder, with a couple of guys up there that Steve knew. And so there were a few of those around as well. But yeah, I think that's their bread and butter, right? Their core brand is their bread and butter, and I can't see them ever getting away from that again. So.
Yeah. It seemed like, I ate there. It was pretty good, but one of the things that we talk about when someone comes in with a crazy idea is like, let's really make sure we want to pioneer this, because pioneers die of dysentery. Pioneers end up eating each other in the snow. Like, there's a list of things that happen with pioneers, all right?
For sure.
So, all right. So you go from Freebirds and you leave Freebirds, and oh, by the way, future plug. We did get a verbal yes from Richard Pinnock, who's the new CMO of Freebirds, to be on the show. So, folks, if you want to learn more about Freebirds, I'm hoping to have him on soon.
Nice.
Richard's a great guy. So then you hop into consulting. You jump out of the kitchen, as it were, and maybe out of the frying pan into the flames. Really, how has that worked out? What was the impetus behind consulting? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I really wanted to kind of take all the lessons I'd learned at Chipotle, really, and just I would always get phone calls about what we did and how we grew and how we develop people and how do we expand to all these new markets so successfully. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to try to package that up into kind of a consulting type experience and share that with as many people as I can. And so the last 4.5 years, I've done some speaking. I've had a chance to work with some really cool clients. And I worked with Wahlburgers, got to work with Mark Wahlberg for a few months, which was really cool, kind of helping him understand, okay, where did he really want to take the brand, his brand. So I've done a number of those, some higher profile, some not. That has been really fun for me too. And I've learned a lot from that experience too, because I'm a big believer that anytime you teach something, you learn something. I just really believe it. We always make the point at Chipotle, if you're going to
I don't know if I could work with Mark Wahlberg or Mark Wahlberg. I think I would get fired on the first day, because if he ate something I made, I'd be like, would you say it's a good vibration? Would you say it's a sweet sensation, Mark?
That's awesome. Yeah, that was a really interesting experience. I really enjoyed it. It was pretty short. It was about 4 months, but it was but it was a lot of fun. So that was really kind of my desire, was to take everything I'd learned, which at the time I had not yet put into a book, but I eventually put into book form, to go out and try to share with people how to make the organization stronger, how to create really, if you were to put me in a box, I'm an operations and a culture guy. That's really what I am. I believe that culture is the backbone for everything that you do in an organization, and that has to be right.
Absolutely.
First. That has to be right first. So that was my desire to get into consulting, and it was somewhat with mixed results. I had some really great experiences, some not so great experiences. And what I learned is that I don't really want to be an entrepreneur. It's probably not where I want to be, long term. But it was a really great experience for me. I learned a lot.
I love that. So you mentioned the book. Let's bring that to the forefront here.
Yeah.
It's called Cutting Onions, which I laughed at I'm not laughed in a bad way. Like, I laughed to myself. Yeah. I had a chortle, as it were, because there is something irrational in my brain. I don't know if you have it too, where if I'm cutting Spanish onions specifically, and I start tearing up because I am of Puerto Rican descent. I've cut Spanish onions ever since I was old enough to be allowed to hold a knife.
Right.
and yet my eyes will still tear up and I get mad at myself. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Be a man. But I loved it. So I laughed at myself when I saw the Cutting Onions podcast and Cutting Onions, the book. So tell me about the evolution of the name, why that matters, why it's important. And then let's open up the cover of the book, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I knew I wanted to write a book. I had been blogging for several years. I had quite a bit of content on my website. And I had just had this desire to okay, how can I package this together and maybe write a book? And so, but I couldn't figure out what to call it. What do I want to say? Because it was more than just about Chipotle, but a lot of it had to do with Chipotle. So I went back and forth with a lot of different names in my head. And then one day I was actually in my kitchen, standing there, cutting an onion. And I'm like, and so to just give you a little bit of the story behind that. So one of the things that we focus on at Chipotle, among many, many other things, is how to cut an onion. And there's a right way and a wrong way to cut an onion to get the right dice or, the right strip. The way you cut an onion for different recipes is going to be different, right? I mean, if you're cutting for fajitas, it's going to be different than if you're cutting for the guacamole. And so, and that became such kind of this foundational core skill in the restaurant. And, I mean, if you could cut an onion really, really well, that was great, and you could probably do more, right? So, and so I thought cutting onions, that's what it should be, and then it was all about leadership lessons that I had learned in the restaurant and, in the industry and, all those things that we just kind of talked about with culture building and how to develop people and how to create high performing teams. That's all in the book, and all I lay out clearly in there what we did at Chipotle to do that, to make that happen. And how do you define what it means to be a high performer, and what are the attributes that you need to have? So it was a great experience for me. I reached out to a publisher. They loved it. I wrote it. It's been out for just over a year. It came out the week that the pandemic happened, the week that the shutdown happened. It came out last year. So I'm actually working right now on a relaunch of the book, which I'm super excited about. Okay. Work on a website for that. I've got someone working on that now. So yeah, it was a great experience to be able to really document that, really more than anything, of just kind of all the things that I had done, knowing that I would probably be transitioning away from consulting at some point. I wanted to just have that all documented for folks to read through. And, of course, I'm always happy to answer questions, and I'm always happy to talk to people when they call, about that experience. So.
I love that, and I love that you've packaged at least everything that you've known. I've just gone down that path myself with the Bullhearted brand.
Yes.
So we're currently on Kickstarter at the recording of this episode. By the time this episode airs, it will hopefully be available. How many pages is the book that you wrote? And, where can people buy that? I was going to plug it at the end, but let's just plug it now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's 198 pages long. And it's available on Amazon. You can also order from any book retailer. It's currently not on the shelf anywhere, but you can order from any of the major bookstores out there. So you can order from any book. You can order from Barnes and Noble. You can order it from Target. And then from Amazon,
nice.
Of course. So yeah, absolutely.
And we'll have links to it too on the show notes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I love it. So full transparency, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it is it's actually top of my list. And I'm not just saying that because you're here. It really is.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dive into it because I think there's going to be a lot of magic in there. So you went from consulting, you had some ups, you had some downs. That's consulting. Exactly. But now, as of last week, you took the helm at Sheridan's Unforked.
Sheridan's Unforked, yeah, which is a small little brand here in Kansas City that I'm actually, for me, full of transparency, it was actually a consulting client that I had working with Jim himself, Sheridan. And, what we do is we live to serve you, chef inspired food. We always try to buy local, support the local ingredients first. That's important. Seasonal ingredients are really important to us. We source from organic farms and prime growing regions. So, we want to provide the highest quality ingredients possible for folks, but we also want to create that enlightened hospitality experience for folks as well. We would fall squarely into that kind of fast casual segment for sure. We do have a drive-through in 1 or 2 locations, but we're really that casual dining model. And it's an amazing brand. And, again, taking everything that I've learned and being able to apply it, what I've learned over the years, just like you, is that all the things we learn, those things are transferable, right? And they can travel with you. And so now getting to go into a young team and helping them grow and helping them create their future is really exciting.
Yeah, I love that. They've been on my radar for a little bit. I think we covered the initial brand identity design on our blog, Grits and Grids.
Nice.
So it's awesome to see you take the helm. What's the vision? What is going to happen next? What can we look out for with Unforked?
Yeah, great question. So just meeting this week with the founders, and what we're going to do is we're going to build out the rest of the Kansas City market. We actually have 2 Unforks open right now, 1 under construction that'll open in January. We have plans for another 2 or 3 in Kansas City, and then we're already having conversations with what's next and where do we go next, because we believe this is a brand that will travel and that people will love. And so you can expect to see some growth. So my goal is, thinking over the next 5 years or so, is that we're definitely going to have Kansas City totally built out with actual plans to develop into another market or 2.
I love that. Well, it looks like we're up on time. So final question, and then I'm going to just let you springboard yourself into plugging the hell out of everything. It's Death Day. This is your last day on Earth. What is your final meal and or drink?
That's a great question. So my final meal, and I haven't been yet. I want to go to Italy. I really want to go. I want to go to the place where pizza was created. I want to go to the birthplace of pizza. I want to go to Naples. I want to have the best pizza from best pizza chef in Italy, whoever that is. That's what I want. And I want it with a glass of incredible wine and a Diet Coke. That's what I want. That is my last meal on Earth. So
I love it. So one more question before you plug. Yes. Pineapple on pizza or no?
I can go either way. It's not my favorite. So I would have to say no. If I had to pick one, I'd say no. I'd say no.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Bobby, how can people connect with you? Where do they find you?
Sure. Yeah, they can find me. I am on LinkedIn. I'm there all the time. I'm on there trying to share valuable content that I think will be helpful. They can also reach me at unforked.com for sure. If they go there, they can also read more about the brand that I'm leading right now. They can also reach me on my website too. They can go. There's a new website coming. It's going to be actually Bobby Shaw at me.com. So make sure that's correct. It's actually .me. So they can reach me at bobbyshaw.me.
Okay.
So that is coming. They can also reach me on my consulting website too, which is obviously bobbysshawconsulting.com as well. And then I'm on Twitter as well. So yeah, I'm pretty much on all the platforms. I'm on Instagram as well. So you can reach me pretty much anywhere. So
that's awesome. Yeah. And Bobby's sharing all kinds of great information, not just things from himself, but from others. And the podcast is fantastic. You have to listen to it. And my final piece of advice, Bobby, is please do a pop-up shop where you're doing some sort of barbecue smoked legs and call it Shawshank Redemption.
I love that. That is hilarious. Nice.
Well, it's been awesome having you on. Thank you so much for your time, all your insights, and you've been an absolute gem.
If you love what we served up, please follow us at Vigor Branding on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Medium. Forktales is produced by the team at Vigor. Audio and video post-productions provided by Zencaster. Music performed by Jet Trash and licensed through musicbed.com. Joseph handles his own hair, makeup, and stunts. Copyright 2003 to 2021, Vigor Graphic Design LLC, all rights reserved.